Welcome to Stonehill Studio, Mr. Springsteen.
We met up with Bruce Springsteen at his New Jersey farm.
Bruce Springsteen, everybody.
Where he has recorded nearly all of his music over the past decade.
I got so down and out in Frisco.
I've heard you say that music is therapeutic for you.
Of course, you know, I mean, I think the act of performing is psychologically centering, and when you come off, you've had some experience that contextualizes your life, why you're here, what you do, who you love, why, you know, how you love and approach your work. I'm lucky in that I work with my friends alongside of me. There's no other job in the world where the same people you worked with at 18, and 16 in some cases, you are working with when you're 70.
Wow.
I've gotten to work with the people I love the most.
And who love you back.
Yeah, and to continually find something new as I've worked along the way, you know.
Last year, he took home his first Tony Award for Springsteen on Broadway. The show combined his popular music with personal reflection.
My dad, never a talkative man, right, blurted out, "You've been very good to us."
You've written a lot and sung about the relationship with your dad.
And he says, "And I wasn't very good to you."
But at the end of his life, you also, because I saw the play 3 times, you all managed to work that out. I'm wondering...
Pretty well.
Pretty well.
Yeah.
Pretty well.
Better than in some ways I hoped for. You know, usually you don't expect those things to have a lovely conclusion in some way, you know. It's rare. I think the people that we've struggled with and been very distant with, it's more common for those things to end unresolved. Mm-hmm. So much of life is unresolved. Mm-hmm. You know, so to find some resolution is always, it's always a gift, you know, whenever that occurs.
A lot of people don't get the resolution that you and your dad got at the end.
So that's very fortunate, you know.
You've also talked about your bout with depression. What would you want people to know about the importance of talking about it and not trying to hide it?
Well, I grew up with a generation that hid it, or they didn't even know they were hiding it. They just weren't addressing it, you know. And there was a lot of mental illness on the Irish side of my family. Each household had at least one person who was struck down pretty seriously by it. We had 5 houses on this one little block. And each household had a member that was suffering with it. Why that is, I really don't know.
But at the time, Bruce, we didn't even know it was mental illness, though.
No, it was just strange behavior.
Yes, yes.
You know, so when you're a child, it's just behavior. It's just unusual and embarrassing behavior and frightening behavior. And it's just a part of your life because it's a part of your family. So there was just absolutely no awareness whatsoever as to get help for what, you know?
Yeah. So when did you know you needed to get help?
Well, I was old enough, my generation was old enough to look back at the previous generation, but at a certain point go, something wasn't right. And something probably could have been done about it, you know? But I was well into my 30s before that idea even dawned on me, you know? And it came about because I was having an enormous, difficult time just doing some very basic things, you know? And when you realize you have no skills or have deficiencies in your ability to find them, you start to question, well, what's that about? Where'd that come from? So I was in my early 30s when I started to really question these things and go about looking for some way to address them, which I did through the analysis, which I've done for 30 years. Yeah. But also for me and for my father, at the end of the day, last 10 years of his life, there was medication out there that really gave him a life he would not have normally had, and gave us 10 years of his life that we would not have normally had. He got to see my children, his grandchildren, which would not have happened otherwise.
And because you did have a complicated relationship, did you worry about the type of father you would be? 'Cause I'm wondering how that influenced the father that you are.
Yeah, there were a lot of mistakes I didn't want to make, and I think the way you look at it is like, I don't want my kids to have to dig themselves out of my hole. They're going to have their own hole they got to dig themselves out of. That's just part of life, you know. I don't want them to have to dig themselves out of my hole. So how can I fix that? You know, how can I make sure that, hey, as I said in the play, their sins are their own.
Yeah.
They're not my sins, you know. And so you do your best to, you know, to parent them in a way where you don't pass down too much of the baggage that you had to carry and that you carried. Now we always pass something along, and that's just life, you know. But if you work at it, you find at the end of the day, like I say, okay, now they'll have their own problems to work through. I don't want them to have to spend half their life working through my problems. Mm-hmm. So as a parent, you do your best to not lay too much of your own bullshit on them.
Yeah,
you know?
That's beautifully said. I never thought of it that way, because you're right. They're going to have their own issues.
It's just a nice place to get your relatives together.
Not far from his studio is the barn, where he recorded his new concert film, Western Stars.
Sunrise, sundown, the street.
And here we sit in New Jersey. As you say in your play, you've traveled all around the world, and you end up right where you started.
10 minutes from my house
Yeah.
is where we are.
It's also where he and his wife Patty Scialfa decided to raise their 3 children.
When did they know that you were famous and that you and Patty were certainly famous together? When did they, and how did you deal with the fame of them?
They got pretty old before it made any difference to them, because we moved back to Jersey when they were going into the 1st grade with the intention of them growing up around a big family. We had like an 80-member Irish-Italian family, and that was the way that I grew up. So Patty and I wanted them to grow up the same way. And because they were around all kinds of people who did all kinds of different things. Mm-hmm. And that was really essential. If they ever looked over at us and said, well, gee, I don't know if I can do that, they said, yeah, but Uncle Ricky's doing this, or Uncle John is doing this, and there were a lot of other models they could follow that would lead to just successful lives, you know.
Was there ever a part of you that hoped they would do this?
No,
never.
No, I think no. From the beginning, we were just, you want them to find what's in their hearts, you know. You want them to find their own passion. As long as, I think all we wanted was that they would lead relatively happy, meaningful lives, whatever that meant for them. And so as a parent, you're trying to guide them along their path. You're not trying to guide them along your path. Your path was yours, but you are trying to guide them along theirs. And you just feel what that is along the way. And my kids all found their own roads to travel and have pretty happily done so. So we're fortunate for that.
I got a wife and kids in Baltimore, Jack. I went out for a ride and I never went back.
Do they like your voice? The reason why I'm asking, because in the Bruce Springsteen book, you said you didn't really like your voice.
I never cared for my voice.
What do you mean by that?
I still don't. Listen to it.
No, but what don't you?
It
I'm
always
serious.
sounds like I'm just waking up or something. I don't know.
No, you said it's like a barman's voice.
Yeah,
doesn't have tonal beauty. That it's sort of, doesn't have the range.
I've learned to sing pretty well with it, given what I was, what I was handed. But really good, really great singers, people who have a really great instrument. Like Sam Moore from Sam and Dave, or Marvin Gaye, or I think Rod Stewart's got a great, Bob Seger has a great instrument.
You don't think you have a great instrument?
No.
Bruce Springsteen?
No. I had a real workman-like voice that I then learned to use to the best of my ability, but it was never it was never an interpretive instrument of its own. You know, I'm never going to record definitive versions of someone else's songs. That's why I have to write. I have to write or else I'm sunk, you know.
With the killer great sayers and the secret places that no boy can fill.
I really had to learn how to conceptualize a world and to write well. You know, that was where I was going to create an identity that was going to be uniquely mine, and so I really worked hard on writing well.
What is that uniquely your identity? Because I do think you have a very distinct singing style in the way that you sing.
Well,
you know, you're not like, wow, wow, wow. It's a very distinct...
Oh, because that is what I sound like to myself. No. But I don't know.
I was surprised. That surprised me to read that. That did.
No, it's just, you know, I'm just looking as honestly as I can as what my tools were, you know. And I was lucky because I got handed I was good at a little bit of everything. I could play the guitar, I could sing and learn how to sing. I was good at my studies. When I analyzed a piece of music, I was very good at that. I could see what made the singer great, what made that song great. And I could then apply it to my own work, you know. So I was analytically very good.
Whoa, she's the one.
You know, no disrespect to Rod Stewart or Bob Seger.
She's the one.
I just think that that's interesting that you look at that and say, they got a really good voice. When people are looking at you going, I want to be like him.
Well, you know.
The songs he has written are considered American classics and have been praised by presidents of both parties, from Ronald Reagan,
New Jersey's own Bruce Springsteen,
to Barack Obama.
He's the only guy a president still has to call the boss, other than the First Lady.
President Trump, on the other hand, was not as kind at a recent campaign rally.
And I didn't need little Bruce Springsteen and all of these.
He was implying that other people need to have all that help. He doesn't need that. And so he's going back to 2016, and this is now 2019. Are you surprised that he's trash-talking you after all this time?
Not really.
Yeah.
Anything's possible.
I know. I mean, a lot of people are very concerned about the direction of the country.
It's just frightening, you know. We're living in a frightening time. The stewardship of the nation has been thrown away to somebody who doesn't have a clue as to what that means. You know, I mean, the United States of America is in your care. Do you know what the stakes are? Do you know what that means? And unfortunately, we have somebody who I feel doesn't have a grasp of the deep meaning of what it means to be an American. My only hope is that it's over soon and someone comes along who understands the beauty and the difficulty and the stakes that we play for as a citizen of the country, you know.
Well, you know, you campaigned for Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Is there anybody, if they called you, you said, okay, I'll go out?
I don't know.
Are you still assessing yourself?
I mean, I've kind of spent my chips on on the folks I've helped in the past, but I always take it as it goes and see how it turns out or what comes up as we get closer to elections and things.
We'd like to thank Bruce Springsteen and his lovely wife, Patty Scialfa, for inviting us to their home. Inviting probably isn't the right word. How about, I've been begging for 5 years, and they finally said, okay, come on, bring your crew. So we were at their home where their recording studio keeps very busy. It would not be a big surprise if a new release and a tour appeared on the near horizon. We all sure hope so. Thank you for joining us tonight.